Hey everybody, good morning from Ecuador. So the Clintons and a bunch of other rich political families would like to thank you for taking the attention off of them this past week or so via the social media phenomenon and engineering feat that has been this Brazil wildfire issue. You really got to hand it to Mark Zuckerberg and Jack Dorsey, the other tech CEOs, as well as the media, for pulling this one off. It's amazing. They've somehow managed to convince people to post things like, this is burning at record rates, and how come nobody is talking about this? And actually, everybody's been talking about it nonstop for the last week, and I mean everybody, and the media as well to some extent. So it's hilarious. Even that ridiculous narrative is still somehow managing to stand. It's just really amazing how they can manipulate millions of people so easily. And now, so the Brazilian Amazon is not burning at record rates. You have to actually look at the data to find that out. Don't just read those articles that say INPE data says it's burning at record rate. It's not. Now, I think it's really bad that it is burning at all, right? That's terrible. I think we need to stop Amazon deforestation. Um, so I just want to get that out of the way first in case anyone thinks I think it's good to destroy the environment. I obviously don't. I actually moved to the Amazon to help reforest it, and that's what I'm doing. So I'm not a person who doesn't care about the environment. So, anyways, let's talk about the data a little bit before we go back to the Epstein thing. So there's two data sets we can look at for the fires, right? We can look at number of fires and total area fire coverage. Obviously, number of fires is totally useless to look at, which is why everyone's focusing on that. If you look at total area of fire coverage, you'll see that it's going down. Um, you need to look at the global fire emissions database, so you can see that I'm not making any of this up. First of all, you can read NASA's official statements, which verify what I'm saying, but you can also look at the global fire emissions database on their website. On the bottom, where it says totals, you can see that the green, which is the year 2019, is lower than the other year's averages. You can also see how it peaks each year during this time of year, which is when all the farmers are burning the crops, which is bad. That's conventional farming. They're mostly small farmers. Many of them are even indigenous. That's just what they do. Um, Farmers all over the world need to be taught to farm in a more sustainable way. That's a whole nother video. That's a whole nother topic. It's very complicated, which also goes to show. Anyways, um, so you'll see based on that data that the fires are not, it's not burning at a record rate. We're actually doing better than other years. The mainstream media, when reporting on it, and Facebook memes, of course, mention the INPE data. The Brazilian Space Agency itself even says that their satellite data, is not valid unless it's corroborated with yearly data because it's a short-term satellite look. These satellites cannot see through clouds. You need to compare it with yearly data before it becomes valid. But the media is just taking that data and running with it and saying, "Oh, you can see it's burning at record rates." It's not. Now, some people don't want to believe the media is manipulating data because they think it's so obvious. Why would they do it? They'd be caught on it. Listen, they do it all the time, and they're caught doing it all the time. But they're just so good at manipulating the public, nobody really knows or cares. People keep consuming media. Um, all right, so what are the fires? Why are the fires happening? Is it really Bolsonaro burning down the rainforest to exterminate the indigenous people, as one person suggested to me? No, most of it is small farmers burning their land as they do every year. Now, most of it is bad, like conventional farming, you burn the crops every year. That's bad. A lot of it's burning down new virgin rainforest land. They cut it, they burn it, and they plant new crops to meet new demand. That's also pretty bad. There is a small portion that's actual natural wildfires that start, or maybe someone makes a campfire and it spreads in a dry area and becomes a wildfire. And then there's also, we'll say, a fourth category. That's the only category that's actually really kind of good. Well, I won't say good, but there are some areas that are natural grasslands that farmers use for grazing. If they don't do natural controlled burns every year of certain areas to get rid of the dry matter, then once every 10 or 15 years, there will be a massive wildfire that wipes out entire regions. Like, for example, we saw in California, a lot of the wildfires there were due to poor forest management over the last couple decades. So there's about four different categories of fire currently going on. None of them are Bolsonaro's fault. This has very little to do with Jair Bolsonaro. As much as you may love him or hate him, everyone's posting about the Amazonias and saying, I know Bolsonaro is a horrible guy. It really has nothing to do with him. And he says some pretty hilarious things in the media. Um, that people are using to justify blaming him. They're like, oh, he said the NGOs are starting the fires to make him look bad. He makes these tongue-in-cheek comments in response to the media roasting him for, like, blaming him for all the fires. Yeah, he doesn't care about the environment that much, unfortunately. I won't say he's the best president in terms of protecting the environment, but he says stuff like that because they'll come to him blaming him for all the fires, and he says, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if the NGOs were starting more additional fires themselves just to make me look worse. Um, anyways, so I guess that's really all I have to say about the fires. So they're trying to take your attention off of the Epstein, so that kind of just gets out of everyone's mind, and people stop talking about it, and no one's demanding that the government do anything about it. Um, right before the wildfire thing started on social media, Attorney General Barr said a few things like, "We will not rest until we're not going to stop the case here. We're going to prosecute the others who are involved." Da da da. They're not going to do that. Are you kidding me? No. He says that to make everyone feel good, and then bam, social media storm, Brazil wildfire. In 1 to 2 weeks, everyone's going to stop talking about the Brazil wildfire. You just watch. Everyone's just going to stop, and some new thing is going to pop up. And if you're actually aware of these things, you're going to look back, wait, that was kind of weird. All of a sudden, everyone just really started talking about it nonstop. It lasted for like exactly 1 to 2 weeks, and then that just stopped, and something else cut in. That's not natural. That's social media engineering. That's how they control the masses. So they needed to get everyone's attention off of the Epstein case just long enough. What's another thing that's happening right now? Well, I have a friend who works in D.C. He's involved. He's involved in the monitoring of outgoing calls of prisoners in the federal prison system, and many of the prisoners that he had to monitor are in MCC, right? He says that in the last week he's had pretty much no work because the prisoners aren't making calls because they're moving around tons of prisoners. They're in transfer. And when the prisoners are in transfer, they're not allowed to make outgoing calls. You might think, well, what's the point of that? Well, what's the point of not allowing them to call their family for 1 week? They're just going to talk again after a week or 2 weeks or whenever this is over. Well, here's the thing. You remember that one prisoner who was there said that he heard shrieking and yelling from Epstein's room when they found him. First of all, the guards wouldn't be shrieking and yelling because they've seen that kind of thing before, right? Epstein shouldn't be shrieking or yelling because he was hanging with a cord around his neck or a sheet around his neck. You can't scream or yell when you're hanging yourself because your breathing is cut off. So that kind of goes to show that he was killed and not suicided. But that one prisoner saying that, it was all over social media. People were talking about it. They need to get the prisoners to stop talking for just a week or two, long enough for them to put something else in everyone's view. For example, the Brazil wildfires. So if they can get all the prisoners that were in that area of MCC to not call their family for a week, there's going to be no little nuggets or tidbits for social media meme makers to feed on, or the mainstream media to feed on, or the alternative media to feed on. Everyone will just focus on the Brazilian wildfires, and after that, it doesn't matter if the prisoners start talking about what they heard in their outgoing calls, because it's not going to catch on and become viral because people are already, maybe they'll bring Ebola back or one of those other social media fad things. So that's kind of how it's going on right now. If you kind of keep abreast of things and watch the trends and don't get caught up in these new wave of social media outrage that are occurring like clockwork after a big thing like Epstein, you can see what's happening. But if you get caught up in it, you're just going to be sharing the same memes that everyone else is. The ones where they're saying, why is nobody talking about this, in the midst of everybody talking about it. So don't be stupid. Keep an eye on what's happening. Stay abreast of things. Observe the general trends. If all of a sudden everyone starts talking about one thing and then stops, and then all of a sudden starts talking about another thing on social media and then stops, you should start to be a little bit suspicious and start to think maybe this is another example of social media engineering by the likes of Zuckerberg and Dorsey and other people that are involved. Anyways, that's all. Have a nice day. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope I made you think a little bit. And yes, Amazon deforestation is very bad. There are many things we can do, such as re-educating farmers, re-educating the public so that they aren't buying so many processed foods and so much beef and things that require virgin rainforest land to be cut down. There are a lot of things that can be done. Posting on social media about how the fires are Bolsonaro's fault is not one of them.